I'm sitting here at my favorite spot where I pass by very often when I go on my bike ride, and it's at the edge of town of Chico. And today I'm going to read to you something that I've written. Being without language is the default which we all return to once we are not speaking, listening, writing, or reading. So we are without language if we do not talk, if we do not listen, if we do not write or read. And we are without language when we do not engage in any of these behaviors, because there is no inner language. So I read again. Being without language is the default which we all return to once we are not speaking, listening, writing, or reading. However, since we imagine that we have inner language, because of our disembodied language, our usual way of talking, in which we do not listen to ourselves while we speak. Since we have disembodied language, we seem to be having this endless chatter going on in our so-called mind. But if we would stop our disembodied language, if we would stop our usual way of talking, in which we do not listen to ourselves, and if we would engage in embodied language, in which we listen to ourselves, then we would be done with language completely when we do not listen, when we do not speak, when we do not write or read. In effect, even while we engage in embodied language, I have embodied language, but even while I engage in embodied language, every pause that I take is a return to being without language. Another way of saying the aforementioned is that we don't really worry. Good morning. We don't worry about having nothing to say, because it is true that we have nothing to say. Surely with embodied language we discover our wordless sense of being, which due to our usual way of talking, our disembodied language, it could never become clear to us. So there is of course this wordless space that we can all enter if we do not speak, if we do not listen, if we do not write or read. But we do not enter that wordless space. We cannot enter that wordless space because we're used to our disembodied language. And the disembodied language, in which we do not listen to ourselves while we speak, has given us the illusion of inner language, our mind. And so we believe that this mind that we have is true. But our mind is not true. Our mind is simply a result of the way in which we talk. And if we would talk differently, if we would stop our disembodied language, and if we would have, like I have, embodied language, then there is no mind. There is no inner language. And then every time we stop using language, we are without language. I like to read that sentence again, that sentence that I just read, because I just want to make it clear how I wrote it. And of course, I'm just speaking here with myself, right? I read it, and then I kind of felt like it was a bit difficult because I don't know, it's a complicated sentence that I created. And so I need to read it again to read it exactly right, because I feel happy doing that. So, if we would stop our disembodied language and engage in embodied language, we would be done with language completely when we don't speak, listen, write, or read. In effect, even while we engage in embodied language like I do, every pause is a return to being totally without language. And another way of saying this is that we don't worry about having nothing to say, because it is true, we have nothing to say. Surely, with embodied language, we discover our wordless sense of being, which due to our disembodied language could never become clear to us. In essence, our disembodied language wasn't able to express our individually lived experience, although we had no other choice than to compulsively keep trying. So with our disembodied language, we also try to express our individually lived experience, but we keep failing. And our failure to express our individually lived experience with our disembodied language could only result in two outcomes. One, with disembodied language, we endlessly pretend to be who we believe we are. And two, we just give up on expressing or trying to express our individually lived experience, since it never satisfies us. We keep failing. Certainly, who we are is not a belief, and who we claim to be could never resolve our illusion of inner language. But admitting the harsh truth, the cruel truth, that we have been using our language incorrectly, by admitting that we have been using our language incorrectly, that is the way in which we manage to finally stop our disembodied language. And then we begin to listen to ourselves while we speak. And as we stop our disembodied language, of course, we also stop the fantasy of our inner language, the illusion of inner language. The moment we stop our disembodied language, our illusion of inner language is also gone. And so this is why also the binary nature of disembodied language and embodied language is so crucially important, because that binary nature, that we either have one or the other, there's no overlap. We either continue with our disembodied language, or we just stop it, and then we're able to have embodied language. So that binary nature is something that everyone, without realizing it, keeps defending against and being in denial about, because the shift from disembodied language to embodied language is instant. It happens in just one moment, that all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, now I'm having embodied language. It is instant and it is total. So it completely undoes in just one moment everything that you have believed in because of your disembodied language. So your illusion of inner language is instantly gone. However, it is not permanent. Even though you may be able to have some embodied language, you will not, probably, most likely, almost certainly, not be able to continue with your embodied language, because your conditioning history with disembodied language is bound to be triggered multiple times before you acquire a relative, stable, embodied language. Yeah, that is what I have. I have a relative, stable, embodied language. And so, yeah, you can only keep admitting that you keep falling back into this old conditioning of disembodied language, and then it stops, and then you have embodied language again. So initially, we have to just be grateful and patient and kind to ourselves, and forgiving also that we keep falling back into this old habit. But we do at least experience some moments in which we have embodied language, in which we can perfectly explain and express and understand, oh, this is what my individually lived experience is. Oh, all language is overt. Oh, there never was any inner language. Yes. So, okay, if you can somehow be grateful and be also patient with yourself and kind to yourself and forgiving and understanding that this is just how it works, your conditioning history is going to be triggered again, and then you just catch yourself, and then you go back again to your embodied language. So initially, yeah, if we are grateful, if we are even noticing it, because yeah, it will happen that you will just go back again to it again, that you relax again, that you're not so tense, that you're not so fearful anymore, that you're not so stressed, that you're not so frustrated anymore, that you actually begin to enjoy a little moment here or there, something that makes you feel good. So you have experienced some embodied language. And as our ability to notice that we have lost it again, yeah, that is the only way. Once we acknowledge that is the only way to get it back. Yeah. So you have to notice that you've lost it in order to find it back and to have more of it. So you have to acknowledge that we've lost our embodied language many times before we begin to recognize and have faith in our inevitable return. Yeah, we will inevitably return to our embodied language, in spite of being affected again and again by our history of conditioning with disembodied language and the disembodied language of others, of course, because we are continuously exposed to that and confronted with that. So paradoxically, in the beginning, we seem to be losing our embodied language again and again. Yeah, so if you just get started with this, you're going to sort of see if this is true what I'm saying, and you're going to talk with yourself, and you find out really quickly that you engage in disembodied language all the time. And if you manage to have some embodied language, you keep losing it all the time. Yeah. So in the beginning, you seem to be losing your embodied language again and again. But as you continue to explore, as you continue to verbally express so that you can hear it, so that you can feel it and experience it and allow it, then you will know and you recognize that you are acquiring, you are experiencing your embodied language again and again and again. You are actually finding back your embodied language again and again. So yeah, contrasting that again with how it is in the beginning. In the beginning, it seems like you're losing it again, but then later on, you're finding it again and again. Moreover, we notice that not only that we have shifted from disembodied language to embodied language, but you have more and more embodied language and less disembodied language. But we also witness how all our other behaviors, the behaviors that fit with our embodied language, they become more pronounced, while the old habits that went along with disembodied language, they all dissolve.